Welcome, dear listeners. Before I open the door to this story, I ask just one thing: subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me which city you're tuning in from. Your support keeps these heartfelt stories alive. Happy listening. It was one of those July days when the city seemed to melt under its own weight. The asphalt shimmered like black glass freshly poured, sending up waves of heat that distorted the air. The smell of tar mixed with the sweet, almost cloying perfume of blooming honeysuckle from someone's overgrown fence. Most people hurried with hunched shoulders, wiping sweat from their brows, but I, Olea Hightower, 64 years old, retired librarian, felt none of it. I was floating. My feet barely seemed to touch the scorching sidewalk. The usual twinge in my knees, the slow drag of age that had settled into my bones over decades of carrying heavy tomes and climbing library ladders, had vanished. In my arms I held a small velvet burgundy pouch tied with a satin ribbon. Inside, wrapped in whisper-thin tissue paper, lay 2 antique silver spoons, handles enameled in faded rose and forget, me, not blue. I had found them in a dusty corner of the vintage shop on Maple Street, the one with the bell that always jingled too loudly. They had cost nearly half my monthly pension, but I paid without hesitation. They were for my grandchild. We didn't know yet if it would be a boy or a girl. Verisha always changed her mind about the ultrasound, but I already loved this child with a fierceness that surprised even me. For months I had tolerated Verisha's endless complaints. The brownstone was too drafty, the stairs too steep, the light too harsh for delicate eyes. I had tolerated Kellen's quiet sighs, his muttered comments about needing a real future. I cooked their meals, washed their clothes, listened to their dreams, all for the promise of that tiny heartbeat I had never heard but already cherished. But the lightness in my step that afternoon came from something far greater than baby gifts. An hour earlier I had sat in the cool, wood-paneled office of Augustus Sterling, old family friend, attorney, the man who had handled my parents' estate and my late husband's small insurance policy. He had taken off his half-moon glasses, polished them slowly with a checkered handkerchief, and begun to read. My brother Langston's will. Langston and I had not spoken in 12 years. A stupid argument over inherited land neither of us needed, had grown into a wall of silence. Letters went unanswered. Phone calls ended in dial tones. I assumed he had forgotten me entirely. I assumed his money, whatever remained after his restless business ventures, would go to some distant cousin at charity or simply evaporate in taxes. I was wrong. Augustus looked at me over the rims of his glasses, voice low and steady. Everything, Olea. Absolutely everything. 2 luxury condominiums in new downtown developments, glass towers with dormer and rooftop gardens. A winter cabin in the Poconos. Stone fireplace, sauna, private lake access. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, stocks I could barely pronounce. The numbers were staggering, enough to change lives, enough to erase every worry Kellen had ever whispered about, making it enough to silence Verisha's complaints forever. I walked out of that office feeling the ground shift beneath me, not in fear, but in wonder. Plans bloomed in my mind like summer flowers. I could buy Kellen the startup capital he had always wanted. I could give Verisha the nursery of her dreams. Soft whites and gentle blues. No drafts, no danger. I could finally step out from the shadow of being just the mother-in-law and become something more: a provider, a protector, a quiet miracle. I turned into our familiar alley. The old Victorian row house rose before me, brick the color of dried blood, ivy thick on the facade like a living curtain. My first-floor windows overlooked a small courtyard overgrown with wild green. Usually I kept them closed against dust and street noise, but that morning I had thrown the sash wide, hoping for any breath of air. Now, as I crossed under the stone archway into the shadowed courtyard, my steps slowed. I wanted to hold on to this feeling, this fragile, iridescent joy, for just a moment longer. Laughter floated out through the open window. Kellen's deep, rolling laugh, Verisha's high, sharp cackle. They sounded happy. My heart lifted further. The news would land on fertile soil. I was about to tap on the glass, surprise them, watch their faces light up, when something stopped me cold. A note in Kellen's voice. A mean, lazy edge beneath the amusement. A tone I had never heard directed at me before. I froze. Pressed my shoulder against the warm brick. Peered cautiously through the gap in the lace curtains. Verisha stood in the middle of the living room. She wore the loose floral tunic I had ironed for her that very morning, pale lavender with tiny white daisies, but now she was unbuckling straps at her waist. A small metal click. A long exhale of relief. She tugged the contraption downward. It was a prosthetic belly, carefully crafted foam and fabric, rounded to mimic 6 months of pregnancy. She tossed it onto the sofa like an old cushion. It bounced once, then rolled to the floor with a soft thud. God, I'm roasting in this thing, she groaned, arching her back. Her real torso was flat, slender, unmarked by any child. She collapsed into the armchair, kicked her feet up onto the coffee table, right onto my favorite embroidered tablecloth, and stretched like a cat in sunlight. Kay, toss me a beer. Kellen, my only son, the boy I had raised alone after his father left, sat opposite her. He cracked open a can, took a long sip. He didn't look surprised, he looked bored. Comfortable in the lie. Hang in there, he chuckled. Not much longer. Mom's already on the hook. Did you see how she was hopping around you today? Varisha baby, eat some yogurt. Varisha baby, is there a draft? They burst into laughter again. The sound cut through me like shattered glass. She's such a knave old sheep, Varisha said, voice dripping with contempt. Mark my words, Kay. Another week of this performance and she'll sign this whole place over to us. I told her yesterday I need to nest, that I don't feel like the mistress here. She almost cried from happiness. For the sake of a grandson who doesn't even exist, she'll give us everything. And once the deed is in our names, we'll end this circus and ship her off to that old shack in the country. Kellen scratched his stomach lazily. Why not? Air's healthier out there. We'll gut this place, knock down walls, open it up, make it ours. The velvet pouch in my hands turned to lead. The spoons inside felt suddenly obscene, gifts for a future that had never existed. Inside my chest, something broke, not loudly, not with tears or screams, quietly, irreversibly. All the love I had stored for decades, the midnight feedings, the school projects, the nights I sat up worrying, drained away like water from a cracked jar. Only emptiness remained, cold, clear, transparent. I looked at my son's bloated face, at his shifting eyes. I looked at Varisha, predatory, satisfied, calculating. I saw strangers, parasites. They didn't just want the house. They wanted to mock me, to use my love as a ladder, my naivety as currency. For one burning second I wanted to smash the window, storm inside, scream until the walls shook. But the librarian in me, the woman who had hushed noisy children and enforced silence for 40 years, spoke instead. Anger is fire. It burns fast and leaves ashes. I needed ice, cold, clear judgment. I stepped back into the shadow of the archway, leaned against the brick, closed my eyes, breathed deeply. Dust and distant fried chicken. My heart beat slow, heavy, steady. A knave sheep, they called me. Fine, let them believe it. But sometimes sheep turn out to be wolves wearing wool. I hid the velvet pouch deep in my old leather purse. Silver is for the living, for those with futures. They deserved none of it. Instead, I walked to the corner liquor store, the one with the flickering neon sign, and bought a bottle of Kellen's favorite bourbon, the expensive kind he could never quite afford. I paid with cash, smoothed my skirt, fixed my hair in the reflection of the shop window, and walked home. The key turned in the lock with its familiar rasp. Inside, a sudden scuffle, rustling fabric, quick footsteps, something soft hitting the floor. Mom's home, Kellen hissed. I counted to 10 in my head, gave them time to reset the stage. Then I opened the door. My darlings, I called, voice bright as summer. I set my purse and the bourbon on the console table with a deliberate clink. I come bearing news. Varisha was already on the sofa, blanket pulled to her chin, face arranged in an expression of delicate suffering. Kellen stood beside her, hand on her shoulder, playing the devoted husband. Quiet, Ma, he said, frowning theatrically. Ra has a headache. Oh, forgive me. I lowered my voice to a conspiratorial whisper, but the smile never left my face. But the occasion is too joyful for headaches to matter. I walked into the living room, set the bourbon bottle down with a solid thud. Kellen stared at it. Blowing your pension on booze now? No, darling. I sat in the armchair opposite them, squared my shoulders, felt like an actress stepping into spotlight. I was with Augustus Sterling. Your Uncle Langston, rest his soul, left a will. They exchanged a glance. A flash of hunger in Varisha's eyes. He left me everything, I said slowly. 2 luxury condos downtown, the cabin in the Poconos, sauna pool, the works. Bank accounts. The numbers are staggering. Tens of millions. Silence thickened the room. Kellen's mouth opened, closed. Varisha threw off the blanket, forgetting her performance. Are you serious, Aaliyah? She breathed. I didn't believe it myself at first, I said. But the documents are signed. It's real. Kellen jumped up, face flushed. Mama, can you imagine? We're set. We're kings now. You hear that? We'll buy a house. That car I've been talking about. Ma, when can we access it? When can we start withdrawing? I remained seated, calm. Watch their greed pour out like syrup. Thick, unstoppable. There is one small condition, I said softly, almost apologetically. Kellen froze. What condition? Uncle Langston was traditional, principled. The will requires that the estate pass only upon the birth of a direct blood grandson, male heir, birth certificate, hospital discharge papers, and a mandatory DNA test. The assets are held in trust until then. I watched Varisha's color drain away like water down a sink. Yes? Darling, I continued, patting my knees. The money is frozen. But the timing is perfect. You're due in 3 months. We'll endure a little longer, but then, for the sake of our hair, we'll live like royalty. Their eyes met in panic, but they could say nothing. Confession would destroy everything. They needed a baby, and there was no baby. I rose briskly. Let's celebrate. I'll slice some lemon for the bourbon. You two think about the future. I walked to the kitchen. Behind me, the air thickened with dread. At the counter, I sliced lemons into paper, thin wheels. Sarju stung a small cut on my finger. The pain was sharp, real. Unlike the theater in the next room. Through the cracked door their whispers hissed like steam. What DNA test? Varisha's voice cracked with hysteria. Kay, this is over. We have to bail. Say miscarriage. Take the apartment. You idiot. Millions. Real estate downtown condos. We stall. Buy time. Find a baby for a day. Show it to the lawyer. Get the papers. Then return it. Or say it died. I don't care. We're not walking away from this. I smiled at my reflection in the dark window. The hook was set. Greed is the strongest chain. I returned with a tray. Tea steamed in porcelain cups. Lemon fanned perfectly on a saucer. Well, my dears, I sang. From today, everything changes. Varisha, no more stress. I take all the chores. The health of the heir comes first. And so began their gilded torment. The next morning I started early. No more pizza. No delivery apps. I took Varisha's phone from her hand while the screen still glowed with takeout options. I read Langston's old medical books. I announced. For a strong boy, the mother needs bone broth, rich in collagen minerals. No salt. Salt causes swelling. I simmered beef knuckles for 6 hours. The smell of fat and marrow soaked into curtains, rugs, wallpaper. Varisha sat over her bowl, face green. Ma, I can't. It makes me sick. You must, darling. I pushed the bowl back. Stroked her shoulder. You don't want the hair-born weak, do you? Uncle valued strong bloodlines. Finish it. I won't leave until the bowl is empty, she gagged, swallowed, drank water. Ate, because every nauseating sip brought her closer to phantom millions. Kellen tried to defend her once. I turned to him. Kellen, don't you think your window sales job takes too much time? Varisha needs you here. Massaging feet, reading aloud. The child should hear his father's voice. Ma, we need money. Money. I laughed gently. Soon we'll have so much you could buy the factory and close it. Quit. I'll give you an allowance from my pension. But you stay home. He resisted for 5 minutes. Next morning he called his boss. By cutting their income I made them utterly dependent. Every cigarette, every lipstick, every bus fare, they asked me, and every time I demanded receipts. For the attorney's records, I explained sweetly. Varisha tried sneaking out, meeting a friend. I blocked the door. Flu epidemic, darling. Risk the air, stay home. I'll air the rooms. For 2 weeks I smothered them with care. I saw hatred grow in their eyes. Teeth grinding when I fluffed pillows, jaw clenching when I forced Tolstoy readings. But they endured. They waited for the prize. Then came the sewing. One Tuesday I returned with bags of natural fabrics. Pale yellow flannel, grassy green cotton, milky white muslin. Lace ribbons. Thread, no synthetics, I declared. No Chinese dyes. My grandson wears only what grandmother sews. Varisha tensed. Onesies are loose. No need. Stand up, darling. I pulled out measuring tape and pins. I need growth dynamics for the coming home outfit. She stood reluctantly. Wide tunic. Lift it. I need contours. I'm cold. Over the fabric then. I circled her like a hawk, pressed flannel to her belly, pinned. The pin sank into foam. Oops. Crooked. Repinned. I felt the unnatural hardness, the dry synthetic warmth. Strange. I murmured, palm flat against the bulge. So firm today. No kicking. Sleeping. Varisha held her breath. I took a long pin, turned her sideways, pressed fabric to her side, where padding met skin, and drove the point slightly lower. Ouch! She jerked. Forgive me. Hand slipped. Old age. She rubbed the spot. Rage flickered, then died. Millions were at stake. It's nothing, she hissed. I smiled. removed my hand. The lie clung to my fingers like damp rot. That night their whispers reached me through the walls. She suspects. We need a real baby. Baforums, junkies in maternity wards. Show it, get papers, return it. Say nanny lost it. I don't care. My last flicker of pity died. They weren't just liars. They were monsters. The next escalation was simple. Your prenatal clinic is terrible, I announced over breakfast. Inattentive, unsanitary, I called. Pulled your file. Incompetent. Verisha jumped. You had no right. He missed uterine issues. I saw you wince yesterday. No. The hair needs the best. I called old favors. Professor Sterling. Augustus's brother. Top obstetrician geneticist in the state. Old school. Strict. He'll manage you until delivery. Hair? Verisha clutched her head. Migraine. Car sick. No excuses. Documents require medical certification at every stage. No signature, no money. They paled. But since you're unwell, I softened. I arranged a house call. He's coming tonight. Panic erupted. Vacuuming. Verisha searching for loose clothing to hide the frame. At 7 sharp the doorbell rang. Augustus stood on the threshold. Tall, gray-haired, horn-rimmed glasses, leather doctor's bag. No smile, stone face. Kellen and Verisha had never met him. Only I knew. Good evening. Deep bass, no handshake. Where is the patient? I have little time. We entered the living room. Augustus clicked open the bag. Pulled thick folders, gold-nibbed pen, complaints. Verisha babbled. Nausea, back pain. He wrote without looking. No home exam. Unprofessional. I trust only clinic equipment. Tomorrow referral. But now genetic markers. Mandatory for succession rights. Large assets. No hereditary issues. Blood types. Abortions. Family history. Verisha. First pregnancy healthy. We give birth easily. Like cats. Augustus stopped writing. Pulled a printed sheet. Like cats. He looked at her over glasses. Strange. He held up the page. Verisha Jenkins. 5 years ago, emergency hysterectomy. Fibroids. Uterus removed. City General, Detroit. Verisha opened her mouth. No sound. Kellen turned gray. Rye. What does he mean? She shrieked. Identity theft? Fraudsters used my name. Augustus sighed. Closed folder. Will noted as possible mismatch. I personally examine. Genetics tolerates no lies. He left. Smell of tobacco lingered. Verisha collapsed. He sees through me. We change plan. Stage miscarriage. Go far away. Return with tragedy. She'll give us the apartment out of pity. Kellen even a tuft of wool. I listened from the hall. Felt nothing. Next morning they emerged martyrs. Ma! Kellen began. Crumpling napkin, city killing stress from doctor. We found a retreat forest birth, eco, hotel. Midwives, fresh air. 20,000 for a month. Expensive. I said, stirring tea. You mentioned inheritance. Of course. I rose. Took checkbook from china cabinet. Their eyes burned my back. I wrote slowly. Handed it over. Kellen read. Smile faded. Mao, this says State Psychiatric Hospital. Closed ward. Verisha snatched it. Are you mocking us? I raised an eyebrow. You screamed about errors, passports. Classic hysteria. Phantom pains. The professor recommended it for nervous mothers. They exploded. I smiled. No trips. We birth here, under my supervision. And the game tightened. They retreated to the bedroom. Door slammed. Shouting. Verisha's voice rose. You rag! She knows! That photo! She's laughing! Demand the apartment now. Say I'll leave. Say abortion if she doesn't sign today. Kellen emerged. Face twisted, fear, humiliation, rage. Enough acting, Mom. Sign this apartment over, today. Or Verisha leaves. You'll die alone. I looked at him, saw not my son. A frightened boy breaking toys. You want the apartment? I asked quietly. Fine, but I'm old. I need security cash. Symbolic we out. He squinted. I have no money. I quit. Your car, watch. Console. Laptop. Vinyl. Sell them. Are you crazy? If Verisha and the child matter more than toys, you'll do it. Bring cash by Friday. I sign. He failed the test. 3 days he ran like a hunted animal, boxes out the door. Rizellers in the courtyard haggling his car down. Verisha hissing behind him. Friday evening he returned. 10 years older. Envelope in hand. 15,000. Sold everything. Count it. I took the envelope. Felt the weight. I'll check watermarks, I said. Walked to the fireplace. Summer fire crackling. My whim against. Damp joints. I turned my back. Slipped real bills into apron pocket. Replaced with movie money. Novelty stack $5. Seems real, I said. Held it over flames. Open fingers, the fake stack dropped. Ignited instantly. Kellen screamed. Lunged. Hands in fire. Ash, what have you done? My car, my life. You burned it? Verisha froze. Gray. Money is dust, Kellen, I said calmly. Trust is harder. You failed. I stepped over mind. No deed. Verisha grabbed phone. Police! Crazy woman! Threatening me with knife! Pregnant! Come quick! She turned to me. You wanted war. Hag, you'll get the loony bin. Kellen sobbed over Ash. I sat, picked up knitting, white wool bonnet. Click, click. I knew they had 10 minutes. Police arrived. 2 young officers. Beat cop with folder. Verisha transformed, hair tossed, arms scratched red, clutching stomach. Save us! She's maniac. Forced him to sell everything. Burn money. Keeps us locked. Won't let me see doctor. Officers looked at Kellen, suit. Smeared, broken on floor. Mom, stand up, hands visible. I placed knitting down. Knitting needle in hand. Good evening, officers. Family drama, Verisha shrieked. Maniac, arrest her. I rose slowly. Librarian gaze, quiet authority. She suffers false pregnancy, I said gently. Wants money so badly she believes in a child that isn't there. Don't come near! Verisha backed against cabinet. I stepped forward. Lightest touch, needle tip to tunic center. Pop! Long hiss. Bulge collapsed, tunic sagged into flat rag. Rubber pouch dangled sadly, silence rang. Officers stared, mouths open. Verisha looked down, horror. Shame, I sighed. Poor girl. Needs help. Not handcuffs. Beat cop rubbed nose. False report, disorderly conduct. First time warning, no more calls, they left. Door slammed, silence before explosion. Verisha tore off rubber remnants. Damn you, old hag! I hate you! Your broths! Your face! Kellen whimpered. Ray, what are you saying? She kicked him. Shut up, slug! Mama's boy! Tolerated you for money! Wanted condos to escape you and your crazy mother. She ransacked. Vase, candlestick, jewelry box, painting. Compensation! Kellen rose weakly. Go to hell! I whistled sharply. Childhood trick. Door flew open. 2 movers. Huge coveralls. Taking furniture out, one asked. Not yet. Just stand here. Nothing leaves. Verisha cornered. Handed bag trembling. I dumped contents on sofa. Now sit, both of you, they sat. You chased inheritance, I paced. Lied. Betrayed. Wanted Langston's millions. Yes? Verisha spat. And we'd have them if not for you. I pulled folded paper. Langston had debts. 80 million against 50 assets. I signed waiver. No millions. All auctioned for creditors. Silence. Kellen howled. I sold everything for nothing. You chased a ghost, I said. Ruined yourselves for free. Verisha slid to floor. I nodded to movers. Out. Both. They dragged them, screaming, begging to stairwell. Door shut. Silence. Clean air. Alone in the ransacked apartment. Smell of burnt paper, cheap perfume, fear. I packed Kellen's suitcase. Old camp one. Shirt, socks. Jeans crammed carelessly, zipped it. Light as his life. Open door. Kellen on step, head in hands, alone. Verisha gone. Evaporated when Debs appeared. Mama, forgive me. It was her bewitched me. I love you. Let me in. Nowhere to go. I held suitcase out. You laughed at me through the window. I said. Called me sheep. Planned nursing home. Shack, you sold everything for my signature. You're not son. You're thief. Where do I go? He yelled. Adult life is wide. Go anywhere. I shut door, locked, chained, forehead to wood, 1 tear. Wiped away. Week later, Augustus's office. Windows open, summer, wind. Emerald curtains. He sorted papers. Smiled. Olia, that gambit impressive. Had to improvise. Will confirm option B. Langston had no debts. Fiction, we created estate clean. 70 million. Condos, cabin, accounts. All yours, I signed. Keep condos. Rent them. Pension supplement. Cabin to Hope Foundation. Summer camp for orphans. Langston loved children. And Kellen. Not a penny. I necessity to become man. That's worth more. Augustus stamped. Doan, congratulations, wealthy lady. Plans, I pulled brochure. White liner. Turquoise Sea. Mediterranean cruise. 3 weeks. Barcelona.
Mar single suite.
Balcony. I walked into sunlight. Inhaled freedom. Aaliyah Hightower 64. Millionaire traveler. My own destiny. Life begins now. And so ends the story of Aaliyah Hightower. A tale of motherly love turned to steel by betrayal. Boundless devotion met greed and hardened. Many will argue. Some say too cruel. Blood is blood. Son stumbled. Forgive. Others say justice. Parasites must be cut off before they drain you dry. What would you do? Forgive a son who sold you for money? Or believe Aaliyah gave the only lesson that might one day forge a man from a boy? Life throws plots stranger than novels. No single right answer. Tell me your thoughts and comments. Share experiences. We read every word. If this touched you, hit like, subscribe. More stories coming, vital, poignant, thought-provoking. Thank you for listening. Until next time, life is just beginning. The door had barely clicked shut behind Kellen and Verisha when the silence rushed in like cold water. The apartment felt larger, emptier, as if the walls themselves had exhaled. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, suitcase still in hand from where I'd packed his remnants. The handle dug into my palm, but I welcomed the small ache. It reminded me I could still feel something physical in a world that had gone numb inside. I walked slowly to the living room. The fireplace held only gray ash now, the last traces of Kellen's desperation. I knelt and swept the remnants into a dustpan with deliberate care, as if tidying after a long day at the library. Each particle of soot carried memory, his childhood laughter when he'd helped me shelve books, the way he'd once pressed a clumsy drawing of a house into my hand and said, "This is where we'll live when I'm big." That boy was gone. The man who had sold his life for a forged inheritance had taken his place. I rose and opened the windows wider. Evening air slipped in, cooler now, carrying distant traffic and the faint scent of rain on hot pavement. The courtyard ivy rustled like old pages turning. I sat in my armchair, the one with the worn velvet cushion that still held the shape of my body after 40 years. My knitting basket waited on the side table. I picked up the half-finished white wool bonnet again, loop after loop. The rhythmic click of needles was the only sound. My mind drifted backward unbidden. I remembered the day Kellen was born. A blizzard outside the hospital window, snow piling against the glass like white feathers. I had labored alone. His father had already vanished by then, chasing dreams that never included us. When the nurse placed him in my arms, tiny and red-faced, I whispered his name like a promise. Kellen. Strong, enduring. I had vowed then to give him everything I never had: security, education, love without condition. I gave him libraries instead of playgrounds, books instead of toys, quiet evenings reading aloud while the city roared outside. He grew tall, handsome, restless. He wanted more cars, businesses, flash. I understood. I never tried to guide. Verisha had come later. She arrived like a storm cloud. Beautiful, sharp-edged, always hungry. I saw the warning signs early. The way her eyes flicked over furniture, calculating value, the two sweet smiles that never reached her eyes. But Kellen loved her. Or thought he did. And I, fool that I was, believed love could redeem. Now, sitting here with wool in my hands, I understood the depth of my mistake. Love is not blind. It is willfully sightless when we refuse to see. I set the knitting aside, rose, walked to the china cabinet where Langston's old photographs stood in silver frames. One showed us as children, me 12, him 10, arms around each other on the porch of our parents' house. Another from years later, Langston in a suit, me in my librarian cardigan, the rift already beginning. I touched the glass. "You always knew people better than I did, brother," I whispered. "You saw through masks I never noticed." The inheritance had never been about money. Langston's will was his final gift, a mirror held up to those who claimed to love me. He had known, perhaps from his own lonely life, that greed reveals character faster than any confession. I closed the cabinet, turned off the lights one by one. The apartment settled into darkness, peaceful for the first time in months. Sleep came slowly that night. When it arrived, it brought dreams. Kellen small again, running through the courtyard calling, "Ma! Ma!" I reached for him, but my hands passed through air. I woke before dawn, heart pounding, the room still dark. I made tea, strong black, no sugar, sat by the window and watched the city wake. A new day, a new life. And somewhere out there, my son faced his first morning without lies to hide behind. The first week without them passed in strange quiet. No complaints about drafts. No delivery bags piling up. No fake groans from the sofa. I cleaned methodically, scrubbed the lingering smell of broth from the kitchen, aired out Varisha's perfume from the curtains, vacuumed ash from the rug. Each task felt like erasing their presence, layer by layer. Neighbors noticed. Mrs. Delgado from upstairs knocked with a plate of empanadas. "Everything all right, Aaliyah?" "Haven't heard the usual noise." I smiled thinly. "Family matters resolved. Quiet is a blessing." She didn't press. People rarely do when age grants you the armor of privacy. I went through Langston's papers again. Augustus had sent copies after our final meeting. The real figures stared back, 70 million, clean, no debts. The condos alone would generate enough rental income to live comfortably forever. The cabin, now donated, would soon host children who had never known summer camps. It felt right. Langston would have approved. But money is cold comfort at night. I found myself wandering the apartment, touching objects that had once belonged to Kellen. The dent in the wall from when he'd slammed a door at 16, the faint pencil marks on the kitchen doorframe tracking his height year by year. I measured myself against them now. Shorter, older, but standing straighter. One evening I sat with old photo albums, pages yellowed, edges curling, Kellen at 5 grinning with missing teeth. Kellen at graduation, cap crooked. Kellen and Varisha at their small wedding, her smile triumphant, his uncertain. I lingered on that last one. Had I seen it then? The calculation in her eyes. Or had I chosen not to? Regret is a heavy guest. It arrives uninvited, sits in your chest, and refuses to leave until you acknowledge it. I acknowledged it. I had enabled them. My endless giving had taught Kellen that love means surrender, that mothers exist to be used. I had never demanded respect, only offered it, and in doing so I had raised a man who believed the world owed him. But regret is not guilt. Guilt paralyzes. Regret teaches. I closed the album, walked to the mirror in the hallway, looked at the woman staring back, gray hair neatly pinned, eyes clear, lines etched by years of quiet endurance. Not a sheep, never again. The next day I booked the cruise. 3 weeks, single suite, balcony overlooking endless blue. I packed slowly. Bright dresses I had never worn, sun hats, the silver spoons, and now for myself, a reminder of what I had almost given away. I bought travel books on Rome, Marseille, Barcelona, read about ancient stones and sunsets over the Mediterranean. For the first time in decades, anticipation warmed me more than anger had. Meanwhile, whispers reached me through the grapevine. A mutual acquaintance mentioned seeing Kellen at a cheap diner downtown, alone, unshaven, applying for jobs behind the counter. Varisha had vanished, rumor said, to another city, another mark. I felt no triumph. Only a distant pity, like watching a stranger struggle in the rain. I did not reach out. Some lessons must be learned in solitude. The airport smelled of coffee and jet fuel. I wheeled my small suitcase through security, passport in hand, boarding pass crisp. No one to see me off, no one to wave from behind the barrier. Just me and freedom. The plane lifted smoothly. I watched the city shrink beneath me, the brownstone, the courtyard, the alley where everything had changed. It looked small from above, insignificant. The Mediterranean welcomed me with turquoise and gold. Barcelona first. Gaudi's impossible architecture, streets alive with music and laughter. I walked alone, slowly, letting the sun soak into my skin. I ate pala by the sea, drank sangria at dusk, listened to street guitarists until my heart remembered how to beat in rhythm again. Marseille next. Rougher, saltier. I wandered the old port, bought lavender sachets for the suitcase, stood at the edge of the water, and let the wind pull strands from my bun. For the first time in years, I felt invisible, not in the erased way of being taken for granted, but in the liberating way of being no one's burden. Rome was last. The Colosseum at sunset, vast, broken, enduring. I sat on stone steps, tourists chattering around me, and thought of empires that rise and fall, of families that do the same. I touched the silver spoons in my purse. They clinked softly, a small sound, a private victory. On the ship's balcony each night, I watched stars reflected in black water. I wrote letters I would never send, long, honest letters to Kellen, explaining not excuses, but truths. I burned them in the small metal bin provided for safety. Ashes to sea. I returned home changed, not softer, harder in the good ways, resilient, self-contained. The apartment greeted me like an old friend. I rearranged furniture, bought fresh flowers, opened windows to let light flood every corner. Life continued. Months passed, seasons turned. Winter came, then spring. I rented the condo's good tenants, quiet people. The income arrived monthly, steady as breath. I traveled again, smaller trips now, a weekend in the mountains, a week in a coastal town. I read voraciously, volunteered at the local library, found joy in small things, a perfectly brewed cup of tea, birdsong at dawn, the feel of old books under my fingers. Then, one rainy Tuesday, the doorbell rang. I opened it cautiously. Kellen stood there, thinner, hair longer, eyes hollow, a cheap coat soaked through. "Ma," he said. Voice cracked. I did not invite him in. Not yet. "What do you want, Kellen?" He looked at the floor. I've been thinking. A lot. About everything. Silence stretched. "I was wrong," he whispered. "About everything. Varisha left the first night, said I was useless without money. I slept on couches, worked odd jobs. Dishwashing. Construction. I saw what life is without you." I watched him. No tears this time. Just quiet defeat. "I don't expect forgiveness," he continued. "I don't deserve it. But I wanted to say I'm sorry and to thank you for forcing me to see myself." I studied his face. The boy was still there, buried deep, but present. "Come in," I said finally. Out of the rain, he stepped inside. Hesitant, like a guest in a stranger's home, we sat at the kitchen table. I made tea, strong, black. He spoke haltingly, of jobs lost and found, of nights questioning every choice, of realizing greed had hollowed him. I'm not asking for money, he said. Or to come back. I just needed you to know I understand now. What I almost destroyed, I listened, said Little. When he finished, I spoke. You have a long road ahead, Kellen. Redemption isn't a single apology. It's daily choices. Prove it with actions. He nodded. I stood. You can stay one night, on the couch. Tomorrow you leave. Find your own way. He looked up, grateful. That night, I lay awake listening to his breathing from the living room. Not forgiveness, not yet. But a door cracked open. The smallest sliver of light,